Hi, I'm Odessa. I drove 9 hours through a snowstorm with a cake in my lap and hope in my chest to surprise my sister at her engagement party. But when I walked in, everyone looked at me like I was the storm. They'd erased me from the guest list, laughed about me crashing, told lies I wasn't supposed to hear. So, what do you do when the family you've always protected finally shows you they never planned to protect you back? Stick around. Because the cake wasn't the only thing they left behind that night. Comment if you've ever been treated like a stranger in your own family. And don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter. Snowstorm was easier than family. I left the city just after dawn, the skyline shrinking behind me in the rearview mirror. My trunk was packed tight, mostly with a towering white bakery box, carefully insulated for the ride. Venna had once told me she loved strawberry champagne cake more than anything, so I ordered it a week early, paid extra to have it made fresh that morning. 9 hours through sleet, ice, and white-knuckled roads, because I wanted to see her face when I walked in. She was my little sister, even when she didn't act like it. I stopped once for gas and hot coffee, changing into my heels in a gas station restroom. My coat clung to me like a wet blanket. Still, I smiled, cheeks flushed from the wind, repeating in my head, "This is worth it. She's worth it." By the time I reached the upstate estate, my tires were crunching on gravel crusted in fresh snow. The mansion loomed like a bridal fairy tale, gold lights twisted along wrought iron gates, string quartets echoing faintly from the main hall. I thought, this is going to be unforgettable, just not in the way I imagined. As I handed my keys to the valet, he blinked at me twice. "Are you catering?" I laughed politely, assuming he was joking. "No, I'm family." Inside, the air was warm and perfumed with vanilla and roses, but the chill from outside didn't leave my spine. Nobody greeted me. Women in pastel gowns glanced over their shoulders, lips tightening. I took a deep breath, walking in with the cake box like it was a peace offering. Then I saw her, Venna, in a silk blush dress, hair curled into perfection. She was laughing at something a groomsman whispered until she spotted me. Her smile faltered, then her face dropped. "You actually came?" "I drove all day," I replied, trying to sound lighter than I felt. "Surprise!" She didn't even reach for the box. "I didn't think you'd, make it in this weather." I set the cake gently on the side table, next to trays of mini macarons. "Well, I did. You're getting engaged. I wouldn't miss it." She blinked, and behind her, one of her bridesmaids leaned in, whispering loudly enough for me to catch. "She wasn't on the list, was she?" I tried not to flinch, but then I saw it. Venna's expression wasn't one of shock. It was calculation. "I'll be right back," she muttered, disappearing into a side hallway. I stood there, ignored, as people flowed around me like I was part of the decor. I found my mother near the fireplace, dressed in pearls and navy. She offered a quick air kiss, then said with a strained smile, "Just don't make this about you, okay? Tonight is for Venna." I forced a laugh. "Of course." Then she glanced down at the wet hem of my coat and frowned. Venna's fiancé passed by. I smiled at him. He nodded, barely. I walked deeper into the house, passing framed engagement photos. Not one had me in it. By the dessert table, I overheard giggles. "Drama magnet. Every family's got one." Maybe she thinks this is a rehearsal dinner for herself. They didn't even bother whispering. I found the coat room to drop off my things. Inside, I saw an ornate tray labeled Bridal Party Gifts. There were 10 boxes, sparkling jewelry, handwritten cards. My name was nowhere. I sat on the bench nearby, exhaling slow. Then my phone buzzed. A group text. Venna's bridal party. I wasn't meant to be in it. Maybe someone accidentally added me. Or maybe the universe decided I deserved the truth. One message stood out, time-stamped from earlier that day. "She doesn't fit the look. We'll say the list was full." Sent from Venna's number. My throat dried. The corners of my eyes stung. I stepped back into the cold, breathing in the icy air like it might numb everything inside me. For a moment, I just stared at the snowbanks. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. Link to next chapter. The cold had barely numbed my face when a voice called out behind me, the voice I used to trust the most. Not even a chair. The cold from outside still clung to my coat as I stood in the hallway, phone in hand, the blue glow of the group text illuminating the cracks in my heart. My fingers trembled, not from the snow, but from the words etched into that thread. Venna's words. I stared for a moment longer, willing myself to unsee them. Then, without replying, I deleted the message. But the damage was already done. The screen might have gone dark, but the echo of those sentences would ring in my mind for a long time. I pressed my lips together, inhaled deeply, and stepped back into the main banquet hall. I walked slower this time, trying to find a rhythm to my steps that didn't make me feel like I was crashing into a world that had already rejected me. The music was louder now, the bass vibrating lightly through the floors, a carefully curated mix of celebration. Laughter swelled from the far corner, where Venna and her bridesmaids huddled around a sparkling champagne tower. Her back was turned, but I could still see her smile. It wasn't for me. Tables lined the grand room, each covered in silk runners, flickering candles, and elegantly printed name cards. I scanned them all once, then twice. My name didn't appear. Not even a variation, not even a mistake. There was a table by the dessert station, one seat, empty. I moved toward it with hesitant hope, clutching the folded coat in my arms like a shield. But just before I could reach it, a server stepped in with a practiced smile and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that seat's for the DJ's assistant." I nodded silently, forcing a tight smile, the kind that says, "It's okay," when it absolutely isn't. So I stood, in the corner, alone. I filled a plastic cup with water from the refreshment table and held it with both hands, fingers curled tightly like I could squeeze comfort out of it. From where I stood, I had a clear view of the projection screen showing a photo slideshow. Childhood pictures of Venna flashed by, blowing out birthday candles, winning her first dance competition, hugging friends at prom. Not one single image included me. I might as well have been edited out of her life. Someone brushed past me, knocking slightly into my elbow without apologizing. I moved an inch closer to the wall. Even the wall seemed more welcoming than the people in this room. Aunt Claire was the only one who even acknowledged me. She appeared briefly, in a gown too tight for her age and perfume so strong it nearly made me cough. "You should try to be happy for your sister," she said, lightly touching my arm. "This is her big moment. Just let her have it." I swallowed my pride along with the knot in my throat. "Of course," I replied, voice flat. But the smile I gave her was practiced, polished from years of family functions where pretending was a survival skill. She moved on before I had the chance to respond with something real. Not that it would have mattered. No one was really listening tonight. The burn behind my eyes returned. I blinked it away once, then twice. But the third time, I gave in. I excused myself quietly and found the hallway leading to the restrooms. Once inside a stall, I locked the door and sat, back against the cold wall, the coat still clutched tightly in my arms. The tears came slow at first, hot trails against my frozen cheeks. I didn't sob. I didn't make a sound. I just leaked, like a faucet that had been drip, drip, dripping for years and no one noticed. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I wiped my face with the sleeve of my coat, took a deep breath and stood up. The kind of breath you take before walking back into battle, knowing you won't win, but refusing to lose silently. As I walked back toward the ballroom, I took a wrong turn, accidentally stepping into a service hallway I hadn't noticed before. The walls were tighter here, lined with rolling carts and trays of food. I paused to reorient myself, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. Familiar laughter. Then a voice. Venna's voice. I froze. She was just around the bend, talking to someone, maybe Blythe. Their tones were light, tipsy, unguarded, and then I heard my name. Accidents are revealing. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Their voices were coming from just around the corner, bouncing off the kitchen tile. I could see their shadows on the linoleum, Venna's curls bobbing as she gestured with a champagne glass in one hand, and Blythe perched on a stool, legs swinging lazily. "I can't believe she actually drove here," Blythe said, laughter already curled in her voice like a spark waiting for fuel. Venna replied without missing a beat. 9 hours through a blizzard? For what, a pity cupcake? The sound of Blythe's snort was sharp, mean. She's always been desperate for attention. God, what if she'd crashed on the way? Venna chuckled, and something in her tone cut deeper than I expected. Honestly, I could have used the silence and the sympathy. The laugh they shared afterward echoed. It wasn't just cruel, it was practiced. I backed away slowly, like any sudden movement might expose me. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed space. I turned down a hallway that smelled like rosemary and cleaning bleach, stumbled into the restroom, locked the stall, and finally let myself cry without holding back. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to storm out and throw that damn cake across the room. But I didn't. Instead, I pressed the back of my hand to my mouth, willing my sobs into silence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One notification, a weather alert, not a single message from anyone at the party. Not a check-in, not a, "Hey, where are you?" from my mother. Nothing. I pulled up my text thread with her anyway, just to be sure. The last message was from me. "Just arrived. Can't wait to see everyone." It had been read. No reply. My fingers scrolled through old messages on autopilot. I stopped at a photo from last Christmas. Venna opening a gift, our mom smiling behind her, me partially cropped out at the edge. I remembered birthdays no one showed up for. College move-in day, where my roommate's mom brought decorations, and mine dropped me at the curb with a tight hug and a "make us proud." And when I got promoted last year, the family newsletter didn't even mention it. But Venna getting featured in a yoga studio flyer? Full paragraph. I wiped my face, checked myself in the mirror. Eyes red but dry, jaw clenched. My chest felt like stone. When I walked back toward the hall, I passed through the kitchen, hoping no one would notice. I saw the cake sitting where I'd left it, carefully packed in that silver box, the one with gold ribbon I picked out at 1 a.m. the night before. I took it out, removed the lid, and stared at it. A delicate 3-layer lemon cake with sugared violets and a fondant banner that said, "To love, to laughter, to forever." It was still perfect, untouched. I set it on the counter. A server spotted me. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Guests aren't allowed. I'm just leaving," I said quietly. "It's fine." I didn't wait for him to finish. I slipped through the service exit, pulling my coat tight around my shoulders. The wind bit at my cheeks as I stepped into the snow, but somehow it stung less than what I'd just heard. I reached my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at my phone again. 14 missed calls from numbers I recognized, but none of them mattered anymore. I powered it off, tossed it on the passenger seat. That night, I didn't go home. I found a roadside motel, paid in cash, and didn't leave my name. I slept with the TV on, still dressed, waiting for the heartbreak to dull. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floral wallpaper, listening to the low hum of the air conditioner even though it was freezing outside. The remote lay untouched beside me. I couldn't bring myself to watch anything. Not a sitcom to laugh at, not a drama to distract me. Instead, I played that hallway conversation over and over in my mind. Every word Venna had said felt carved into my skin. How many times had I given her the benefit of the doubt? How often had I defended her choices, even when they made no sense to me? I drove through whiteouts for her. She couldn't lift a phone to warn me I wasn't wanted. And yet, part of me still wanted to believe this wasn't who she really was. But deep down, I already knew. It was. I curled beneath the motel comforter, scratchy against my arms, and whispered to the ceiling, "What am I even doing here?" No answer came, just the wind outside, rattling the window pane like it wanted to remind me. I had always been on the outside looking in. The motel curtains didn't block much sunlight. I woke up disoriented, still in my clothes from the night before, the faint smell of buttercream and snow clinging to my coat on the chair. My phone was blinking again and again with missed calls and unread messages. I sat up slowly and grabbed it off the side table, bracing myself. Not for concern, but for what I already knew was waiting. "You embarrassed Venna. Why would you leave the cake and disappear? You've always had a flair for drama." Not one message asked, "Are you okay?" I scrolled further, numb fingers tapping cold glass. The texts kept coming. A cousin I hadn't heard from in 2 years chimed in with, "You always make everything about you. It was her night." And then the one that made my stomach turn. Mom, in the family group chat, She's been emotionally unstable lately, just give her space. That was the story now. That I had shown up, caused a scene, and stormed out because I couldn't handle someone else's joy. No one mentioned that I brought a handmade cake after a blizzard. No one asked about the bruising things I overheard. No one wanted to know why I left, because the answer was too inconvenient. They needed a villain, and I had been nominated, unanimously it seemed. By mid-morning, Venna had posted a photo from the party on Instagram. I stared at it for a full minute. She stood beaming, surrounded by her bridesmaids in matching white faux fur shawls. The caption read, "A perfect night with all the people I love, #blessed #engaged life." I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even a footnote. I blinked down at a message from an old friend. "Hey, weren't you supposed to be at the party? Venna said you couldn't make it. Everything okay?" I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen, realizing the rewrite had already begun. It wasn't just that they wanted me gone, it was that they wanted me erased. I sat in that cheap motel bed, the mattress springs poking through the sheets, and let my memories unspool. My high school graduation, no family photo. My first apartment, no housewarming gift. My last birthday, a gift card, unsigned. This wasn't new. It had just finally made itself visible like dust in sunlight. I packed slowly, wiping down the bathroom counter with a tissue out of sheer habit. Before I left town, I drove back past the estate. The snow had been shoveled clean, like the night had never happened. Lights still twinkled on the trees out front, cheerfully oblivious. I parked across the street and stared at the building. Through a side window near the kitchen, I could still see it, the cake box, still sealed, still untouched. I snapped a photo through the glass, not for revenge, for proof. Because someday someone might ask, was it really that bad? And I needed to be able to say yes, it was, and here's what you didn't see. Back in my car, I plugged in my phone, finally checking voicemail. There were 14 missed calls, and one message from Venna. "Look, we need to talk, but not in front of people. You took things way too personally." I didn't delete it. I just let it sit there while the sun crawled lower in the sky, casting long blue shadows across the snowbank beside my car. I didn't call her back, but for the first time in years, I smiled, because I wasn't going to explain myself anymore. Let them talk, let them twist. They'd written their version. Now I was ready to write mine. The snow had melted slightly overnight, leaving crusty patches of slush outside my apartment window. I sat at the kitchen table, still in my sleep shirt and leggings, coffee gone cold beside me. I hadn't planned to answer her call, but I was done hiding behind silence. So when Venna's name flashed on the screen, I pressed accept and propped my phone against the sugar canister. The screen flickered, and there she was, polished, mascara still clinging to her lashes, the same soft curl in her hair from 2 nights ago, perfectly curated, just like always. "You picked the weirdest time to ghost," she said before I even got a word in. "People are asking questions." I didn't speak. Venna leaned closer to her camera, her tone dropping. "You always overreact. You take things too personally. This weekend wasn't about you." Still, I stayed quiet. I'd learned that silence made them uncomfortable. "I didn't mean for you to hear anything," she continued, like that was supposed to make it better. "You know how I get when I'm nervous. I say dumb things. Blythe was just being funny. You took it out of context." She paused, clearly waiting for my forgiveness, or my guilt. I straightened my spine and finally spoke. "I nearly died getting there, Venna." She blinked. "I drove through a blizzard. I brought a cake I ordered weeks ago. I was drenched, cold, and exhausted, but I showed up. And what I got in return was hearing you joke about me crashing, about how silence would have been more convenient." "That's not fair." "No," I interrupted, holding her gaze. "What's not fair is being treated like a ghost at your event. No seat, no photos, no acknowledgement. You erased me from your engagement like I was a stain on your perfect white dress." She scoffed, that laugh she uses when she's cornered. "You're making this into a whole thing. I'm not the villain here." I tilted my head. "Then stop acting like one." Venna's expression hardened. "You're trying to ruin my moment. You're making this ugly." "I'm not making anything," I said calmly. "I'm just done letting you rewrite the truth." She started talking over me again, faster now, desperate to steer the conversation back into her control. I didn't hang up. I muted her. For 30 seconds, I watched her talk at the screen, unaware I couldn't hear her. She waved her hands, her mouth tight and eyes wild. Then she finally noticed I wasn't reacting. I ended the call. No slamming, no drama, just one press of a button. For once, she got to feel the echo of speaking into nothing. I stared at the blank screen for a moment before opening my email. I attached the catering invoice. The subject line was clean. Receipt, cake, Venna's engagement. The body of the email had only one sentence. Attached is the receipt for the cake I paid for, the one that got left behind. I sent it to Mom, to Aunt Delia, to Venna. Within minutes, a reply came from Mom's address. Just 4 words. This isn't helping, Odessa. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. No apology, no ownership, just another attempt to steer the spotlight away from what mattered. But I wasn't 15 anymore, trying to prove I belonged at the adult table. I wasn't 22, desperate for approval when I landed my first job and no one came to the celebration dinner. I wasn't begging anymore. I was documenting, and the truth was finally louder than their curated silence. By the time I finished my second cup of coffee Monday morning, my inbox had a new message. Subject, enough, from my mother. I opened it expecting another cold reprimand, but this was different. Not angry, not concerned, calculated. You've embarrassed our family enough, it began. You're lucky you were even invited. Then, don't ruin Venna's future out of jealousy. Attached beneath her note was a screenshot from a private group chat titled Family Core Planning Only. I wasn't in it, obviously, but they had been talking about me. Venna had written, "She's not well. You know she's always twisted things. Just wait, she'll spin this into some sob story." Mom had replied with a thumbs up. Blythe chimed in, "We tried to include her. She's the one who always makes everything dramatic." The narrative was already spreading like rot beneath floorboards. Quiet, dirty, hard to contain. And now it had a paper trail. What really hit wasn't just the betrayal, but how rehearsed it all felt. Like they had contingency plans for me being a problem, and when I didn't give them one, they invented it. I leaned back from my laptop. The radiator hissed beside me, slow and steady, and I realized something in that moment. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was awake. Around noon, a coworker from my firm sent me a Slack message. "Hey, just so you know, someone shared a screenshot of a vague IG post about a meltdown bride's sister. Is that you?" My pulse spiked. I checked Instagram, searched Venna's profile. She'd posted a pastel-filtered photo of her holding champagne, her head tilted back in laughter. The caption read, "Sometimes jealousy wears a familiar face, but real love shines through." I didn't need her to tag me. Everyone close to her and me would know exactly who she meant, and that would have been bad enough. But a local wedding gossip blog had reposted the photo with a short anonymous story submitted by a bridesmaid at a recent upstate celebration, describing a family member arriving uninvited, demanding attention, and having a breakdown before vanishing. My mouth went dry. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was public, and that changed everything. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. Instead, I opened a folder on my desktop titled Truth, neatly labeled. There were photos of the snow-covered roads, the receipt for the cake, a video clip of the untouched box through the window, screenshots of the messages I was never meant to see. I opened Instagram and posted 3 images. The cake, sitting in the snow-lit kitchen, my frost-covered windshield after 9 hours on the road. A simple selfie I took outside the venue. Wet hair, red cheeks, holding the cake box. My caption, "Sometimes you show up for people who wouldn't shovel your name off a sidewalk. But that's how you learn. Some things you do out of love. Some things teach you who deserves it." I turned off comments after 2 hours, right after they started pouring in. Some supportive, some confused, some asking for the full story. I wasn't ready to give it, but I'd given them enough. Then I opened my Gmail, composed a new message, and attached a PDF of the chat screenshot and the Instagram post. The recipient? The PR department of the company where Venna's fiancé worked. I didn't include any commentary, just the materials. If he wanted a marriage based on curated lies, let him see how they got built. No revenge. I whispered aloud. Just consequences. That evening, as the snow returned and began to patter gently against my windows, my phone buzzed again. A text from Blythe. You didn't hear this from me, but Venna's fiancé just postponed the engagement dinner with his parents. Said something came up. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I curled up on my couch, lit a candle, and pulled the thick blanket over my legs. For once, I didn't feel like the storm in the story. I felt like the break in the clouds. Saturday morning arrived dressed in sunshine, pretending nothing was broken. But the moment I stepped into Aunt Ray's house, I could feel it. That crackling electricity in the air, the kind that hums right before lightning strikes. She greeted me at the door with a polite squeeze of the shoulder and a whisper, "Don't let them make you small." Inside, it was brunch theater. White platters of sliced melon and pastries, too many people in cream-colored sweaters. The smell of syrup didn't mask the tension. I took a seat near the window, where no one had to look me in the eye if they didn't want to. Most didn't. Venna stood at the far end of the dining room, champagne flute in hand, center stage as always. She smiled like a politician and tapped her glass. "I just want to say," she started, drawing out her words like honey dripping from a spoon. "This week has reminded me how beautiful it is when family chooses love over ego." There it was, the dig. Smooth, practiced, poisonous. Someone laughed nervously. A few eyes darted toward me. I sipped my orange juice. I was done pretending I didn't hear the tone beneath her words. I stood up, calm and deliberate. "Mind if I say something too?" She blinked. Aunt Ray's fork stopped midair. A hush rolled across the table like fog. "I drove 9 hours in a snowstorm for that party," I began, "with a cake I paid for, which sat untouched in the kitchen while people who claimed to love me laughed about me dying on the road." Gasps. Blythe choked slightly on her mimosa. My mother's face drained of color. Venna's mouth opened, but I raised my hand, not to silence her, but to hold the floor, just this once. "I heard you, Venna, you and Blythe, through the kitchen door, laughing about how peaceful things would be if I never showed up at all." She shook her head, trying to recover. "Odessa, that was taken out of context." I didn't let her finish. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and hit play. The room filled with their laughter, Venna's voice unmistakable. 9 hours? For what? A pity cupcake? Then Blythe, giggling. What if she crashed? Imagine the sympathy. And the silence. I paused it there. "That's the context," I said softly. Venna's fiancé looked stunned, blinking at her like he didn't recognize her face. My mother reached for her wine. No one moved to defend her. No one could. Venna stood frozen, lips parted in silent horror. Then she lunged toward me. "You don't get to twist this," she snapped. I took a step back, phone still in hand. "You twisted it the second you decided humiliation was easier than honesty." "I called you jealous because you are," she hissed. "And I called your bluff," I answered, louder this time. "You needed a villain in your story so badly you forgot what it cost to make one." The air shifted. The silence wasn't heavy. It was sharp, cutting, real. I didn't stay for dessert. As I walked to the door, Aunt Ray followed quietly, placing a hand on my back. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a boulder. "You didn't just clear your name, honey. You burned the whole script." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Linked to next chapter, the silence they left behind followed me home, but I wasn't alone anymore. Venna's words still echoed behind me like the last gust of wind before calm. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was anxious, but because something in me had shifted, settled. When you walk through a storm that fierce and come out standing, it's not the storm you remember, it's the silence after. I woke up Saturday morning to 3 notifications before I'd even rolled out of bed. The first was from Monica, a childhood neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. "Did you hear?" she'd written. "Engagement dinner's off. His parents asked for a pause." That's their word, not mine. I stared at the screen, blinking through sleep and disbelief. I hadn't expected it to unravel this fast. Next came a vague status from Aunt Ray. "Truth burns at first, but it sets you free if you're ready." No names, no hashtags, but everyone reading it would know exactly who she meant. The last notification was a photo from the brunch, me holding the mic, mid-sentence. Someone had shared it to a private family thread with the caption, "Unhinged, attention-seeking, just like always." I didn't reply, didn't need to. That part of me that used to ache for explanation, used to scream silently just see me, was finally done asking. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee and stared out my window at the slushy street. Across the room, an old box of journals sat half open, spilling years of written-over pages. I pulled one out, flipped through, and landed on a sentence scribbled in teenage handwriting. "Maybe if I'm quieter, they'll love me louder." I tore the page out, lit a match over the sink, and watched it turn to ash. That girl didn't live here anymore. The day passed slowly, like everything was catching up. At sunset, my phone buzzed again. It was from him, Venna's fiancé, or maybe ex-fiancé now. I hesitated, then opened it. "I'm sorry," he wrote. "You didn't deserve that. I heard everything. I didn't speak up, and I regret it." I read the message twice, not because I needed to feel vindicated, just surprised. There was something in his tone that didn't ask for forgiveness. It offered accountability. It didn't fix anything, but it meant I wasn't crazy. An hour later, another message arrived, from Blythe. I'm not proud of who I was that night. Nothing more, no follow-up, no excuse, and yet it hit me harder than any insult she'd ever whispered. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened a blank post. Sometimes it takes a blizzard to see clearly. This is for anyone who's ever been made to feel like they were too much just for existing. I didn't hit publish. Not yet, but I saved it. My voice no longer needed a spotlight, it just needed space. Just as I was about to close my laptop, my phone vibrated again. One message, one word. Please. Venna. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I care to admit. My heart didn't jump, my hands didn't shake, I didn't smile. Because now I understood the difference between missing someone and missing who you hoped they could be. I placed the phone down and walked to the window. Snow had started to fall again. Lighter this time. Softer. And for once, it wasn't falling on me. I was the storm and the clearing sky. I didn't respond to her message that night. I let it sit, unread but not unseen, like a suitcase packed for a trip no one wanted to take. A full week passed before I dialed her number. When she picked up, her voice was so small I almost didn't recognize it. "You just left me," she whispered. "You disappeared, Odessa, after everything." I leaned back into my couch, the same spot I sat in that night I got home from the storm. That's how I felt since I was 9, Venna. There was no venom in my voice, just a quiet truth. And I think that's what startled her most. She didn't fight. She didn't spin. Not this time. "I messed up," she said. "I was cruel. I didn't want you to come because I knew people would compare us again, and I hated the way that made me feel." "Then you should have told me," I replied. "I would have still sent the cake. I just wouldn't have driven through a blizzard to get it there myself." She went silent for a while before saying, "I started therapy this week." I closed my eyes, part disbelief, part relief. "Good. I think that's the most human thing I've heard you say in years." She tried to laugh. It didn't come out fully. "My fiancé hasn't spoken to me since that brunch. He said he needs time to figure things out." "Maybe he's learning what I did," I said. That silence can be louder than screaming. Venna started crying. Real crying, not the attention-seeking kind. I didn't comfort her, I didn't coddle her, but I didn't hang up either. "I don't hate you," I said finally, "but I can't just go back to how things were. I'm done playing the background." I didn't expect a reply. She just stayed on the line, breathing through the distance. And after a few more moments, we both hung up. Nothing dramatic, just done. Later that night, I opened the draft I'd saved. I reread it 3 times before hitting post. To the quiet one at the table, you are not invisible. You don't need their permission to speak. Sometimes your story begins where their lies end. It didn't take long before notifications lit up. Messages from old classmates, co-workers, even extended family members I hadn't heard from in years. Some apologized, some just said, "Thank you." I didn't respond to most. I didn't need to. The next morning, I walked 2 blocks in the chilly air to the little bakery near my apartment, the same one I'd visited a month ago when I placed that order for the cake that never got cut. I ordered another one. Something simple this time, just white frosting with gold dust, no names, no messages, just peace. Back home, I lit a candle on top and sat by the window, slicing the first piece for myself. I didn't toast, I didn't cry, I just sat and ate, quiet, complete. Outside, the snow had long melted. Puddles gathered along the curbs, reflecting clear skies above. Not every ending needed to be loud. Some just needed to be honest. And this one belonged to me. Sometimes, the storm doesn't come to destroy. It comes to clear the air. Odessa's story reminds us that silence isn't always peace, and standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. Have you ever been treated like you were too much just for existing? Or had to walk away from family to finally find your voice? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if you believe in stories that heal, that fight back, that matter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Your voice belongs here too.